I mean, it's like you're going like, oh shit, that's hot. At the same time,
like,
oh shit, that's bad.
At the door.
Lock your doors, goddammit. Hi guys, welcome to LoveCast, the Boys Love Podcast. I'm your host Pixie, and with me are my co-hosts Kayla and Alexa.
Hey. Hello.
So we are talking about some spice today. That's the only way to say it. We're gonna be discussing some good and some bad spice scenes in BL and some of the stuff that we enjoy, not enjoy. But before that, we kind of wanted to preface this episode talking about the age-old discussion at this point about like straight women fetishizing gay content or BLs. Or not even just straight women in general, because
not even just women, because we're not even all women here. So
no, at this point, like we have several men watching this podcast, so
yeah. I mean, even Kayla, like it's just like the amount of queer people who consume BL, and it still circles back to the straight women fetishizing comment. It's like at this point, it's not accurate. It's not even mainly straight women watching BL.
Yeah, and I, for one, like as a straight woman, like the only straight woman on this podcast, I've always had a hard time explaining my enjoyment of spice in BL, because I've never I've grown up in a world that tells me like, okay, I don't know how to explain that, but I've always had a hard time like explaining my enjoyment, and I felt a lot of shame when I was younger because I thought that I was fetishizing gay men, because that's what people were telling me. Like, you cannot watch gay men have sex because you're fetishizing them. And I'm just, I didn't understand it, and I felt ashamed because I couldn't explain why.
Yeah.
But at this point, for me, and for a lot of other women, this enjoyment of BL isn't, it's not about the sex as a sex thing. It's not about reality. It's about fictional sex. And that's what I enjoy. I don't really like real sex. I don't like porn. I don't like having sex myself, even though I'm straight. I just don't enjoy. I'll do it. I don't feel disgust about it, but I don't enjoy it either. That I just have an enjoyment of fictional sex, and if that's in written or TV shows, as long as it's fictional to me, then I enjoy it.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a common sentiment. There's a lot of people on the asexual spectrum who read smut of all kinds and write smut of all kinds. So, I think taking something out of reality can make it feel different for people who don't necessarily experience those feelings in real life or want to see that or experience that in real life. But I also think it's a big thing to a lot of the argument that people make is BL is not porn. And I think that's the idea that a lot of straight people have when they are seeing people engage with BL, that it's all just men having sex. And I think it's important to realize that a lot, not all, but a lot of these stories have full fleshed out plots going around the sex that's happening. So, maybe some people do, but like I'm not just sitting there watching all of the sex scenes from BL and like that's it. Like there's more to it. It's about the characters and the relationship and the story and how they've gotten to that point. So it's like I feel like when a lot of people are like, oh, straight women or whoever are fetishizing BL, like they think of BL as porn, and that like for us, like watching BL and you know watching the sex scenes in BL is porn, but like it's not. It's just not on the same plane of existence.
Yeah, my brain goes off in so many tangents when I think about this topic, but. I mean, there are definitely BL fans who fetishize gay Asian men, and you can see that from like scrolling on TikTok for like 5 seconds. Even
TikTok
with
comments are horrendous. Even
with the gay reality TV show His Man, everyone was calling it a BL.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like generalizing it as everybody fetishizing is very one-dimensional because queer fans exist, like we said, and by doing that you're like completely ignoring how intersectional the fandom is. Like it's not a monolith, and when people try to paint it like it is, you're just like not acknowledging all these other groups under LGBTQ+.
Exactly.
But again, I think that, like, Asian men specifically being fetishized is a huge problem. And as somebody who is also Asian, I've seen it literally play out in my real life, not just online. But I just feel like we have to remember that, like, straight feminine presenting fans who are, like, respectful to the community and who are allies are just not the enemy in this situation. Like, it's just not everybody
because
the fandom is so intersectional, like I said.
Yeah. Yeah, and I feel a lot of, I feel triggered sometimes when people bring up the especially some of gay men bring up as who are against BL and women watching BL, bring up that it's the same as straight men have been treating lesbians for years. The objectification of lesbians, this is like out in public. Lesbians have often, they don't even want to call themselves lesbians because they will be approached by straight men thinking that, of course, if they're lesbians, they have a chance because obviously, right? That whole attitude, I feel like if you're gonna compare BL, women who watches BL with that, it puts the whole narrative into a box and puts a sticker on that box and just says that's how it is, and there's no nuance, there's no nothing.
Yeah, it's not black and white.
I can understand the hesitation, as a queer person, if and this is where we get into stereotypes about who is enjoying BL, because if I was a straight person who didn't know anything about, or not a straight person, if I was a queer person who didn't know anything about the BL community, and even me a few years back before I was into BL, the idea of a bunch of straight women, if I didn't know that BL was more than just sex or yaoi, the idea of that can be off-putting, and I don't think it's comparable to the way that cis straight men fetishize lesbians, but I can understand that that's maybe the only comparison they can jump to. But if you just look into it, just look under the surface just the tiniest bit, and you'll see that it's not the same thing at all. There's different power dynamics when it comes to cis het men engaging with lesbians and lesbian content and lesbian porn or whatever they're watching. And it's just, like I said, it's not porn. So, it is a very different thing at its base level. I can understand the worry, coming from the gay men to an extent. But I think that it's just, understanding the context and understanding the nuance and looking beyond the stereotypes. And if, you can do that, then you'll see that it's not a comparable thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I almost feel like with... BL fans fetishizing, I feel like the part that's fetishized more is that they're Asian than possibly being gay. Like, that's the big distinction, I think, between that and the way that lesbians have been over-sexualized in the media. Because I even think of, like, K-pop. People do that in K-pop, too.
It's the same thing.
And there's technically no, like, BL element to K-pop, even though I feel like there kind of is.
Yeah, but the fan service is there because they've sort of like they've noticed how the girls respond to it, so they're playing into that fetishization, but because they know they'll make money off it. So I mean, No, I mean, the real problem here is capitalism, honestly. Like, I'm just
I
blame capitalism for everything.
It's always capitalism.
Yeah. But, I mean, the fetishization of Asians in general, Asian women, Asian men, it's a thing. It happens everywhere. It's not like a BL thing. It's in everyday life. Like in normal society in Norway, there's a huge problem with Thai women being fetishized by white men.
Yeah.
And it's bad.
Yeah, I just think it's a very nuanced discussion, and it is frustrating when you're a fan of something and you just get thrown under this often inaccurate label of like a straight woman. And a lot of the times it's like straight white women too is the assumption. And like Kayla said, I feel like that just erases so much of the intersectionality of the BL fandom, especially in the last couple of years as it's gotten bigger and bigger. And considering the fact that, you know, the origins of BL and yaoi come from Japan, like, you know, the way that it's been stereotyped to be like this straight white teenage girl or whatever that people think it is, or like single woman spinster type situation, like it's just so weird that it's gotten to that point, and it's really frustrating as like a fan of the genre to be thrown under such an inaccurate umbrella, you know. Yeah,
because we've like had comments on our videos that people think we're fetishizing men, and
which you already it's like you already have to assume all of our identities individually to make that comment. But anyway.
Yeah. So we just like wanted to address that before we get into the actual talking here. And like everything, I just want people to know that like we're not coming at this discussion from disrespect or objectifying or sexualizing or anything like that. It's just a expression or like a genre. It's a story. It's fantasy.
Like there are important discussions to be had around sex and BL, and I think we're gonna touch on some of that stuff too.
Yes,
like
we will.
You know, so it's not just like I don't know. You said it, Pixie.
We'll get into it. We'll be touching on some points during this whole discussion that goes into this. So yes. First, we wanted to talk, we're just calling it the good, talking about the positive spice in BL, because there are a lot of positive aspects of BL spice. The biggest point here about why it's important to keep the spice in BL is that we need to normalize portrayals of queer sex. I made this comparison of like people will like not blink an eye at like the sex scenes in Bridgerton as an example. Like those were pretty explicit, and that will be completely normal. But when it's two men in a show, suddenly you're not supposed to show it. It's if you show it, you're fetishizing it. Like the double standard there is wrong, and you're also gatekeeping, making it harder for people to actually understand what queer sex is, because we don't have queer sex education. Most places. So where are young people gonna learn?
Yeah. I think in general, queer sex, and especially sex between gay men, is like has this reputation and is like very, excuse me, I guess like demonized is the word I'm thinking of. So a lot of people have this idea that like, especially specifically sex between gay men is like some perverted thing, and obviously that's rooted in homophobia. But that's why I think it is important to have sex shown in television and in BLs the same way it would be if it was a heterosexual couple, and to show the different ways that can exist. And I think for the most part, BL does a good job of showing like how different intimacy can be on very different levels, and it goes anywhere from the sweet, fluffy, fish kisses that people love to hate to the more intense portrayals of like BDSM relationships and things we've been getting lately. So I think in that aspect, it's really important for normalizing. And obviously, like, sex in a drama is always going to be sensationalized, and most of the time they don't, not most of the time, a lot of them don't show the educational aspect, or they'll skip those steps. But I think some of them do have a lot of educational inserts around safe sex and condom use and things like that. So obviously it's not a replacement for, consent. It's not a replacement for having like actual queer sex education in our schools and stuff like that, which is something that we need. But I do think it can be a good thing for people who have never seen a portrayal of queer sex before. And like, I think it's a better idea for people to be watching like a sex scene in a BL as opposed to like porn, because I think porn is like a whole different,
unrealistic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. What I wanted to say too is that like often people, especially people who are not don't know about BL, often they hear like spice in BL, or not safe for work scenes, or intimacy in BL, and think very explicitly. But I would argue that BL is one of the best genres of doing also the is explicit, but not explicit, but very intimate still. If you know what I like, an example here. To My Star, the last scene when they're rolling around in the bed and he's between his like that scene isn't like they have all their clothes on, like it's nothing like explicit. They're not even like moving in a sexual way actually, but it's still very intimate. It's still very sensual. It's very tantalizing. So it invokes a lot of feelings when you're watching it.
Yeah. I think like intimacy and like showing scenes that have that level of intimacy, I mean, for me personally, are sometimes some of my favorite scenes in BL. But yeah, I do think that also works to show. I'm sorry, my cat is literally laying on my keyboard. I do think that works to show that, like, once again, going into like gay sex isn't immediately just like going at it, like there's build up and there's intimacy and there's romance, and I think a lot of BLs, and there's a lot of queer media that shows it too, although I think it kind of depends on what media you're looking at and where it's coming from, but yeah, I think like that intimacy and that romance is important for a lot of people, especially like young queer questioning people who like have never seen that type of relationship before and don't know what it can look like. So even though it's a TV show and it's not real or whatever, like I do think it's important for young people to be able to see that,
Yeah.
Melody wants to join.
I think like from before, what I've seen of like queer media is that often, especially if it's made by gay men, it's often very explicit, like to a point where for me it's too much, if you know what, like not everything, but some of the stuff that I watched, or tried. And I think it's the difference between the female gaze and the male gaze. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that queer media. Like, it does like, obviously, like, it has an audience. Some people enjoy stuff like that. And some enjoy it a little softer. I don't know how to say that. But for me, it's always about the tension and the road there, not the act in itself. I guess that's what they call, like, housewife porn.
I've never heard that term.
Never heard that phrase before. Oh my god.
No, it's literally, when I was growing up, that's what they call housewife porn. It's like 50 Shades of Grey and stuff like that. It's housewife porn because you have the build up. It's not just, they're not just
it's like the
it.
For women or whatever, you know, that category type of thing, yeah. So I think that's the difference between the male and the female gaze. Although I will say this, while we do box those in, I do think, like, the world today isn't as, like, squared. Like, we are so much, like, everything is on a spectrum. Like, you can't just box people in, obviously. Like, it's not just women watching this, watching a BL, because it's not right that it's just women that feel that way. Like, but to make a point, we kind of have to sort of box it in. Yeah, it's just like a way to speak against the way that it's stereotyped already, I feel like.
Yeah.
But I also like speaking in terms of those stereotypes. Like, obviously we know that we are not all straight women, you know, but...
And not all women think the same. And I mean, like, there are a spectrum of women as well. Like, not all women want the attention. Some just want the sex. I mean, there's a difference. Same with men. Some, like, not all men just want the sex or objectify women or, there's a spectrum.
Yep.
And there are obviously non-binary people. Like, it's very hard to have these, like, discussions without thinking about nuance, which I think is a huge problem nowadays, because no one is taking into account nuance in their discussions. They're just, like, discussing as if it was black and white without the bigger picture.
The context of the discussions always gets ignored. Yeah, it turns into, like, personal grudges instead of the actual topic.
And like, it turns into people using their feelings as facts. Because, like, I'm feeling this way, it has to be a fact for everyone. Which, people are different. We need to respect that. So it's lately there's been, like, a sort of boom in more explicit BLs, which I think personally is great because you get, like, a range. And that's what we need in BL. Honestly, we need range, because when we started watching BL, there was, like, 3 BLs, and you were just like, okay, we're gonna watch all of them, even though they don't speak to us. Like we're so used to watching everything that comes out that we just... It's
nice to be able to, like, pick and choose stuff that interests me. And be like, there's so much happening that I can actually just pick a couple of shows that interest me. And, like, maybe I feel like I'm missing out on everything, but, like, at least it's more than only having 2 shows to watch in a year or something like that.
And it does, like, help normalize, and it does help not make everything super exciting. I don't know, when I first got into BL, everything was so, like, heightened exciting because it was new, it was different, it was like, wow, am I allowed to watch this? Like, it was very... but now that, like, it's normal. It's okay. I don't need to watch everything. I don't need to get, like, the whole thing in. It's fine. And I love that they are doing more of, like, a BDSM specter on some of the shows, even though I will argue that some of it is a train wreck. but
Oh, absolutely. We can talk about that. Yeah, but I do think like having more range and more choice and more depictions of things is definitely speaking to not only the way the genre is growing, but the way the society is like, their feelings about the genre are changing, because, you know, a lot of the times in the past, you know, you had to keep a certain level of PG or PG-13 ratings to your shows because there was only so much that they were going to let you show on TV, or the production companies would let you get away with in general. So obviously, you know, there's still censored and uncensored versions. Like a different version is going to go on TV than goes on the online platform or whatever. But the fact that, you know, production companies are willing to put money into these darker, more complex, more explicit relationships, I definitely think shows the way that society, and if we're talking about Thailand, you know, the Thai media companies and such have like warmed up, I don't know if warmed up is the right word, but are seeing BL differently than they have in the past, and there's a lot more potential coming from it. So I think in that regard, it's, oh my god, it's a good thing as well. I'm going on vacation later, and she knows it, so she's being needy today. So if you know, are watching this and you see Melody's butt every 5 seconds, that is why.
I don't know if it's like super relevant, but since you mentioned like censored and uncensored, I'm thinking back to our episode where we talked about how BL is rated and how it tends to be rated higher because it's gay. So I'm wondering even if like some of the scenes that are considered NC or like bed scenes, are they even that explicit? Sometimes it's just like someone lays down on a bed and kisses, like
they kiss a little bit and then it cuts to black. Yeah,
you see a fish in a bowl and you know what's up.
Yeah, it's like, no, it's also like you said, like this variation of different types of BL and especially NC with like fluffy and BDSM has it's really been expanded, which is crazy because I did not expect it to ever expand this much when I first got into BL.
Yeah, no, that's true. And talking about the good, like obviously there, like just to segue it a little bit, there's a lot of bad. I don't know how to say that without being less awkward. There is another side to this, and there are shows that are using sex to sell, and obviously even the good ones are still using the sex to sell, but at least they're making a space for it. They're actually making it believable for the story. They're putting a story behind it. It's not just porn, right? They're not just selling sex. A show of sex. Unlike some other shows like Check Out.
Oh, Check Out is like the bane of my existence.
Dude, I'm gonna rant a little bit because I told you this was gonna happen. I said they were gonna do this from the very beginning. You know, all their promotional content before the series even aired was just two boys naked, kissing, or in bed together. Like, it was all just naked boys, right? And then they came out with the show. Every thumbnail had some kind of naked kissing boy in it. Like, everything was just like sex, and the whole talk about OnlyFans and stuff like that. It's just like, how more obvious can you be? And then it comes out that the story is terrible. Like, they haven't... They basically just took sex and tried to make a story around it instead of having a story and including sex in it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I think, like, there is something to be said for the way that they were marketing this drama, and it's not something good. I mean, you know, we're talking about, like, shows that talking about how even other shows use sex to sell. Like, Kim Porsche had a lot of their teaser posters were very, like, spicy, and a lot of their teasers were very spicy in nature. And Unforgotten Night, like, I don't think it was a good drama, but I think it advertised sex in a very different way than Checkout did. I mean, they were both meant to kind of be in the same realm as, like, these NC-17, like, so super spicy dramas. But, like, the way they both advertised were very, very different. And, like, Unforgotten Night was the one that was about BDSM. And, like, they had some, like, BDSM imagery in their posters and stuff like that. But they also, like, at least tried to offer more from the marketing and the teasers that they put out. And so I think with Checkout, it's very obvious that, like, they put out their episode 0. They saw how people reacted to the scenes in that episode 0. And then they were like, we are going to use this to sell the whole drama. And they did. And people tried to tune in for it. And then, like, it had nothing to offer. So it's just like, what is the point of exploiting the sex and exploiting gay sex if you're not going to offer anything else with it,
Yeah.
I feel like I could have let it go and just been like, okay, it's not for me, but there are people who like it and there's a space for it. But the OnlyFans thing just, like, completely rubbed me the wrong way. Like, and being so adamant about how they're filming nude.
They filmed it naked. I was like, why do you need to say that? Why do we need to know how it was filmed? Like, it's so weird to me that
we don't actually want to see these boys have sex.
Yeah, that they think that people do, though.
This isn't porn. Dude. No, I think this is, like, the difference between, like, the female and the male gaze kind of discussion again. I think, like, they saw that girls were reacting to the sex scenes and they thought, okay, let's just have sex. And they don't understand that the story, the tension, all of that is more is more intimacy for us than the actual action. That's why there's porn for men and there's porn for women, because women do not want to see just going at it. It's not like,
I mean, there might be some that do, but no hate to any women who like to see people just going at it, but a BL drama is not the space for that. Like, it's not porn. Exactly. And I feel like they wanted it to be porn basically up until showing their dicks on the screen. Like, they wanted to go as far as just that was the line that they wanted to draw it at. And that is the way they tried to advertise it. And that's where it feels weird and almost like exploitative. Is that exploitative of the actors to me? Because I'm like, I don't know. You want to believe that the actors were in an environment where they felt comfortable filming these scenes and, that they were done in a way that was safe for them. But when I hear that, like, oh, the actors, like, they were so gung-ho about filming their scenes naked, I'm like, that rings an alarm in my head.
I don't believe that
That rings an alarm in my head. And, like, I don't want to make any assumptions, or I'm not trying to say anything about how that production went off, but I don't know, if you have to be so gung-ho about, like, insisting that this is what the actors wanted to, like, explain why you said that, then, like, it feels a little bit weird to me.
Yeah, I don't think you should have to specify that unless you're trying to cover up.
Compensate for something, Yeah.
I mean, like, everything we've heard from this company and everything we've had of our own experience with the company, they are very focused on earning money, and that's it. And we did see, like, an uptick of companies coming out making BLs just to try and ride the BL wave that was happening after Together, and they were missing the point entirely. I can deal with low production value. We deal with, like, hideous audio on these dramas all the time.
Looking at you, love in the air.
Like, one of my favorite, like, Chinese BLs, like the on web BL, because in China. But one of my favorites, like, it's super low production, super low, but I love it. Like, I generally love it because they have a story to tell. There are actors, they're having fun with it. It's fine. But some of these BLs that came out were so obviously trying to just earn money from it that they weren't even putting in an effort, and they were just like very obviously using the boys they were like hiring as actors, because it was like, it's new actors, they don't know the business, they don't know what rights they have, there's practically signing their lives away to the devil.
In a lot of cases, yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah. So,
but yeah.
I
think you said it well when you said, like, a lot of people who try and sell it as just sex like this are missing the point. Yeah. And I think it goes back to these stereotypes about what people who watch BL want. Like, I understand that a lot of the times a good makeout scene or a good sex scene will bring in an audience, but that's not going to get people to stick around if you're not offering anything else besides that, because contrary to popular belief, we also want plot and character development and an actual relationship development. And yeah, for a lot of people, having good spicy scenes is a bonus, and seeing more seeing spicy scenes that are more spicy is a bonus for people. And it's something that will garner interest, and I get that, and I get that's why a lot of these shows are marketing from a sexual aspect. But if you don't have anything else to offer besides that, then like you're missing the whole point of your audience, and you're not understanding your audience at that point, I feel like.
Yeah. I think going into like one of my least favorite examples here, I'm actually very surprised that this happened. I think one of the best example of not being exploitive, but being just a little bit tone deaf in the space is when MAME put out Don't Say No. I think that was very tone deaf for the BL live action audience. I mean, it's probably fine for her novels. It's a whole different genre. Like it's got its whole, yeah. But putting a show up with so much like just sex without like a proper story to it, and putting people like these characters into boxes like God, I forgot their names. Him being slut shamed.
Fiat, yeah, I was gonna say slut shaming.
That's a very like. When has ever men been slut shamed in society?
I mean, I do think it happens within the queer community, and I think that the emphasis was that like he was being slut shamed because he was a queer man, and I think there is a lot of issues with that amongst gay men, like slut shaming. But it was like they could have taken that and done something different with it, and they ended up like using his reputation and like basically explaining that he was forced into sex because of his reputation as a slut, and like all of these issues with his relationship with, I'm forgetting the other guy's name, Jaw's character. All of these issues with their relationship coming because he was so worried, Leo, that he would be too slutty for him and stuff like that. Like, they could have taken an issue in the community, which is like being slut shamed for being a sexual being, which like is an issue, I think. And they could have taken that and used it as something, but instead they played into it and like made it the cause of all of the issues, and like made it a reason that he was forced into sex with someone, and like that was when it got like really like not it for me. Yeah.
I mean, MAME has this and you see that in every show, even if you like it or not, like she has this habit of creating characters that are very like, there's a feminine bottom and a masculine top, and there's no doubt which is which, and that's kind of playing into like a heteronormative narrative, and obviously that's what we don't want. But at the same time, if you're going to do that, there are right ways to do it, and Don't Say No was not the right way to do it.
We don't even need to talk about Tarn type because like we talked about Tarn type enough, I feel like. But yeah, it just feels like there's different levels to Mame's work. And we'll talk about Love in the Air, obviously, because I know Pixie wants to talk about it. But yeah, while I do feel like Don't Say No was better than Tarn type in a lot of aspects, there is also a lot of issues with the way they portrayed like the stereotypes of the characters and how that influenced into their relationship. And I do think that show got to a point where they were just trying to add in sex scenes and you know, trying to make them like on a different level of raunchy, like with the whole vibrator and things like that. Like it just got to the point where it was like trying too hard to be like different from other sex scenes. And I think, you know, that's not inherently a bad thing, but like in this case, it was like, it was too much.
Trying to show that like sex
shock value
happens.
That's a good word.
Yeah, and
Heather.
sex happens a lot in a relationship. Like you do have, for some people, you do have sex a lot, and it's a normal like thing. But
Part
at
of a
the same time, that's not what we're watching the story for. If your whole plot is that they have sex a lot, it's not a plot. And it doesn't like lend anything to the story. I would not like if I watched a show with a lot of sex and it actually had something to give to the story, then it's fine. That's fine because it's a part of the story. It's not just there to I satisfy some fantasy of watching two boys together. Like it's more than that. Yeah, it's like Heather says, some mystery is good. Like that's the whole point with tension.
Sometimes a little cutaway is okay, you know.
Yeah, you that's the whole point of BLs for me. Like you don't need to see the whole thing. Like especially not like mangas are different. That's fine. But on a TV show with real people acting and stuff like that, it's not porn. It's not supposed to be porn. You need to have those cut-offs.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Talking like, since we're already talking about Mame.
Here she goes.
So I have to like, okay, like spoiler alert for Kayla, I guess. Kayla hasn't watched it yet. Kayla, shame on you. No, I'm not gonna get into any spoilers. I'm not. But I think like Love in the Air is a great example of how you can do it and be very, because there's a lot of tension. There's a lot of intimacy. There's a lot of what you like. You can. It's more explicit without being too explicit. Like, how do you explain that?
Like, yeah, I
There's
feel
a
like
lot of desire. Yes.
Yeah. I feel like it was different to watch because it looked like you were watching two characters that actually wanted each other. And I think that is a very big distinction with Don't Say No. Like, no shade to Ja and First because, like, I think they're great people. But there was, like, a level of awkwardness, I think, to their scenes in the way that they were trying to make them, like, very sexual with the vibrator and, like, they're going so far and all this stuff. I feel like it didn't quite play out with the way their characters were being portrayed. And I think that's why so many people were taken aback maybe by Love in the Air and the way these scenes are coming across. Because, like,
it feels very natural.
Yeah.
That's what I think about the whole... It feels incredibly natural for the personalities of the characters and also for the actors who are doing it. It doesn't feel like they're being forced into something they don't want to. They have like a really natural chemistry without it being like I would feel like with the Tarn type, Mew and Golf had more of like an explosive chemistry, but with these two, Boss and Noel, it's more natural and just I think the whole show has a great like balance of the not safe scenes and a story.
Yeah. I mean, like their story was based around the progress of their relationship and the development of their relationship. And in that way, I feel like the timeline of how things played out and the way the scenes came into play, like I think, what was it, 2 major NC scenes in this one?
Yeah.
And, you know, I think they both felt fitting for the timeline of the show. They didn't feel like they were coming out of nowhere. It felt like they fit where the characters were at in their relationship development. Like for the second scene, especially, I think with Rain as Noel's character, like the way he was in that scene felt very fitting for where his character was at that point in the story and things like that, which like I think those are like, you know, that's what makes them so, I don't know what the word is I'm looking for, like memorable maybe, is because like it's very like, it felt very natural and like it fit in with where the characters were and like it made sense for where they were at in their story. And I think that's like surprising for specifically a MAME story, but also a lot of BLs in general, because it sometimes does feel like they just have to put in an NC scene to have at least one NC scene in there. You know, they feel like they have to do it for whatever reason. But like in this case, like it just felt like where they were in the story actually fit and felt like where they would be in the progression of that relationship.
And I just have to like give credit to MAME for once for not using mental illness as a plot point.
Oh, thank God.
Thank God. Yeah. Okay. I could talk about this for an hour, so we're just gonna
reining herself in.
Restraint. Yeah. So, I wrote in our notes about War of Why because I think it's an interesting example. Because it's so meta. Like you have a ton of NC scenes, but they're in a series within the series, and the way they use them is like to show the influence that those scenes have on marketing. But like I've noticed something with the NC scenes, and it's that we never really see full shots of what's going on. It's usually just like close-up shots of their faces, and I feel like that is also intentional because they're trying to get across that like actors' bodies are being exploited, and I think back to like Checkout with that. But like even if you don't think of it like intellectually, the scenes are still really like spicy. Like they're genuinely well done. And I feel like that's also intentional because they ramped everything up on purpose to show that. So, like, it is at times... it, like, does feel raunchy at points. But, like, the way it's executed, it's, like, you understand why they made it so raunchy, but also, like, focused on the characters' faces instead of their bodies. So, I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah. I think it Go ahead, Pixie, go ahead.
Yeah. I was just going to say, I actually, like, especially when I watched, like, the first story, I actually felt a little bit uncomfortable about
That's what I was going to touch on,
Yeah.
I think it puts you in this place where you're, like, because you know the nature of why these scenes are happening, like, you feel like you shouldn't be watching them. And I feel like that plays into the whole point that they're trying to make with there's the first story specifically, was it New Ship? Is that what they're called? What that story was called? This whole idea of like the exploitation of these actors in these NC scenes and knowing why they were pushing them so hard in these scenes. And so despite the scenes being like very spicy and very well done, from Billy and Sang, like as a viewer, you're like, should I be watching this? Because I know why their characters are like pushing themselves in this way, and it's like not a good thing. So I think like the way they portrayed the scenes and produced them, like Kayla was saying, like really plays into the point that they were trying to make with the story overall.
Yeah, and the second story, War of Managers, is it's even more amped up, which I didn't think was possible. It's pretty out there. But I think it's interesting that every time in the series they're filming their series, it's always an NC scene. Like, it's never anything else. I think that is the funny and ironic part of it.
Yeah, I mean, like, we are gonna be doing, like, a sort of deep dive into World Y, and especially, like, the first part. So stay tuned for that. We'll be getting, like, I have a lot of thoughts. What I would like after watching it. I have so many thoughts. Yes.
Yeah.
Alexa, do you have, like, a favorite scene?
So the first one that came to mind for me, like, I will say, I feel like this discussion kind of was inspired by our Discord server,
yeah,
and one of our members there, Troy, kind of like posed this question of the day type thing about like steamy scenes in BL, and one of the first ones that came to mind for me was Game Boys the movie. And I know, like, when we did our review of Game Boys the movie, we talked about that scene, but for me, I think that was just like one of the most perfect examples of intimacy, relationship build up. The chemistry was there. They had the safe sex moment. They had the like flipping the stereotypical positions on their head moment and things like that. And like, I just think that scene, like, it just felt like the perfect like culmination of all the buildup that we've had of those characters, and especially within the context of the movie. And it just, like, it always sticks in my mind as, like, it's definitely not, like, the most raunchy one out there, and I don't think it needs to be, because I think it's just, like, so intimate in the way it was done. And the whole, like, aesthetic of that movie, it really fit well into that, and I think that was definitely one of the first ones that came to mind when I was thinking about this topic.
I mean, when I first saw, like, the question in our Discord server, I was just, like, everything that popped into my head was actually just, like, very tension-based scenes from KBLs. Like, where your eyes linger. Like, there's not a lot of, like, spice in that show, but somehow it's just, it's very spicy to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to my star blooming. Like,
Blooming.
Yeah.
Scene in Blooming. I can't even.
Yeah. But I will mention, there's a show that I feel has the great, like, great educational value of being, like, it has the good sex or good spice, and then it just, like, flies off the shelves and ruins everything into bad spice. Can anyone guess?
Oh, hold on. Let me think about shows that Pixie has.
It starts out so good, and they are perfect amount of, like, safe, like, spice scenes, and then it just, like,
Heather
goes
got
up.
it. Why are you?
Yes, thank you, Heather.
Yeah, of course.
You have to agree. Like, it starts out great. They have, like, the right amount. It's inner space. Like, with the other couple, it's just, like, it makes it, I don't know, it makes it make sense for the show, for the story, and it's good paced and everything. And then it's just, like, fucking, it's just bolts to the wall, and it's just, like,
0 to 1,000.
Oh. Yeah, it does.
Literally fucking.
So if anyone is wondering what we're talking about and need a proper, like, example from, like, one show, yeah, it goes from good to bad.
Yeah. It's like that spectrum of, like, a good tension-felt intimate sex scene, and then it just teeters onto, like, not exploitative, but, like, selling sex is the only thing left to offer fan service in the last couple episodes of the series. And
But I agree with Heather here that I still really love the show. I'm gonna say that. I just think that they completely botched it by doing it like that. They should have taken a break or something. I know it was COVID that did it, and they just, like, had to put out what they had, but dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like we kind of have to include Kim Porsche in this discussion.
Yeah.
And I think that Kim Porsche, I kind of put the NC scenes kind of in the same realm as War of Y, because a good number of those scenes were very dubious consent, especially the first one with Ken and Porsche, and as well as the, I don't know about the scene with Pete in Vegas. It was a weird, it was a situation where someone was being held captive.
So Vegas Pete should have been like super non-gun. They should have gone for it because it fit into the story, the narrative of the story. It's okay as long as it fits in. But they just like, they pussied out. I don't know what.
Well, and that's where I think like the discussion with like Kim Porsche comes in, and why I kind of put it on the same plane as War of Y, because obviously the scenes were like very like they went for it in those scenes, the actors, but then like you also know, like especially with like the first Mile and Oppo or Ken and Porsche scene, we really saw the consequences of that on Porsche, and the way that really fucked him up mentally, and he had a really hard time with himself after that scene. And so I think that's kind of why it puts you into, and like this understanding of their relationship and Ken and Porsche, and the way they kind of like, and Milo and Oppo have talked about it as well, like use sex as a replacement for like communication almost. Like whenever they're having an issue or they want to communicate something to each other, they use sex to do that. And that was a very purposeful aspect of the characters. But I think that's why it kind of falls into that plane of War of Y for me, because like, yeah, the scenes were like really like they went for it with those scenes, but you also know the context and the consequences of those scenes. So it kind of makes watching them feel like you're watching the consequences of them. So it makes them feel different than just like a typical NC scene, because there's so much context and other things going into why those scenes are happening and what the aftermath of those scenes are. But I do feel like for that reason, like they deserve to be, or not deserve to be, but should be discussed kind of in this section.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's like we've said, like you can have very spicy scenes without it like taking advantage of the actors and how comfortable they are with doing stuff on screen. Like you can still frame it in a way that will make it okay. Yeah, in a comfort level. Like I'm just thinking back, like, okay, cover your ears, Kayla. When
just like, okay.
the last explicit scene, when he's writing, right? Everything is covered. Like obviously they have all their underwear, whatever.
You can see shots of their underwear,
Yeah, I mean, like, it's not... probably on set, it wasn't as explicit as it looks.
Oh, absolutely,
but, like, there are ways to make it look more than it is.
Yeah, and you can still have that tension and that spice in a way in which the actors are comfortable. And, you know, I think Kim Porsche is the same way, like Kayla mentioned in the chat, that, like, they specifically had a closed set for all of those NC scenes because, you know, they were showing ass and stuff like that. So, like, they wanted to make sure if they were going to be doing that, it was in a way that was comfortable for the actors. And I think, you know, Love in the Air and having their little blue shorts on, and you can see them in some of the shots, like, it's a way to make sure the scenes still come out really well, but also still keep the comfort of the actors and them performing this scene in mind.
Yeah, and it makes for a better acting scene as well, because if the actors are more comfortable in the position they are in, they are more likely to go for it. They are not afraid that parts will touch parts and whatever, right? They don't need to think about that. They don't need to think about their stuff hanging around and suddenly being caught on camera, right? So you put that out of their heads, making them more comfortable acting. So you can get like a more intimate scene out of it because they don't have to worry about other things.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, like, set protocol for the actors to be wearing some kind of, like, intimacy garment during sex scenes.
Yeah.
that's just a normal part of shooting.
That should be the standard.
Yeah.
Heather put some of her faves in the chat. Make Our Days
Secret
Count.
Crush on You. Yeah.
Secret Crush on You.
Yeah.
We Best Love. And then, of course, Love in the Air. Make Our Days Count was wild. I remember watching that couch makeout scene.
Yeah,
oh my
that's
god.
wild.
And then, of course, the parents walked in. But, like, oh my god. I was like...
yeah. I mean, it's like you're going like, oh shit, that's hot. At the same time,
like,
oh shit, that's bad.
At the door.
Lock your doors, goddammit.
The same thing happened in Love Mechanics. These gays can never lock their goddamn doors.
Oh my god.
Oh my god. Oh, it's funny. An example I'm thinking of right now, like I didn't think about this beforehand, but for some reason the first one that comes to my mind is from Until We Meet Again when they're on that trip to the beach. That one Win Team scene in the room.
Yeah.
It's not even that explicit, but it's done so well. I think that is a really good
Dude, have you watched the teaser they put out?
Yes.
Like, dude, they are not even doing anything. And I was just like, okay, it's getting really hot in here. I'm just like, I know what's happening here.
Yeah. Yeah, they're pretty good. They have chemistry.
I also do like that Dean Parm scene from that episode as well. And I think that one was like really well done in terms of like exploring intimacy, and like the way that whole scene was framed was like Dean wanting, like Parm wanting to do more, and like Dean wanting to make sure Parm was comfortable with doing these things, and like them kind of like setting I don't know if boundary is the right word, but like setting this consensual discussion basically on what they wanted to happen that night, and knowing that like, yeah, they didn't go all the way that night, you know, that was discussed in the next episode, but like they did take steps further, and it was discussed, and it was consensual, and like it was still very intimate in the way it was filmed and came off. And so I think like Until We Meet Again is a good example of like, especially those two scenes in that the trip episode from Win Team and Dean Parm. I really liked both of those.
Yeah. Can I say one thing I really, really hate in BLs about filming? How they film it, or how they cut it afterwards. When they have these like excruciatingly long scenes where they're just close and just staring at each other, and it's just it just like it cuts for the next episode, and you get the next episode, and there's 5 minutes of them staring at each other and nothing's happening, and then suddenly something interrupts them so that the kiss doesn't even happen.
Yeah, that's a classic.
You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Dude. I hate it. Like, luckily they've stopped doing that. I've noticed that they've mainly stopped doing that. I am looking at you, GMMTV, but mainly stopped doing it. I was so mad about that
the eclipse.
I was so mad.
Meanwhile,
what the fuck?
Over and vice versa, we've got Jimmy throwing out tongue left and right, which really threw me off when I was watching some of those
I haven't
scenes.
watched it yet.
Because I was like, this is a GMMTV series, and I am seeing Jimmy's tongue in someone's mouth. What is going on here?
I haven't watched it yet. Oh my god. Yeah, Cutie Pie.
Cutie Pie.
Yeah, the Cutie Pie. I remember
my favorite, like, intimate, like, tantalizing moment from Cutie Pie for me is when C calls out his name.
Oh, when he yells
his full name.
Yeah.
That really gets me too. I can't even.
I felt that. I felt that in my core, and I need C to do that to me.
Oh, Pixie. Never change.
Yeah. I feel like the NC scenes in Cutie Pie are like really overproduced, but I liked them. Mm-hmm. Like they feel a little bit prolonged, but I really didn't mind it at all.
I think it fits like the the story in general and the actors, and just they used Nunu and C in a really good way. Like they know them as actors, they know their chemistry, and they use them in a way that fits for them, which made it good. I think.
Yeah, I can agree with that. They definitely did have some of those moments that you were talking about where, like, they were going in for the kiss and then, like, they cut it for the next episode type situation.
I hate
but
that.
it wasn't, like, as prolonged in some of these other series that are out there.
I mean, it's like giving women, like, the how do you say
It's edging. It's edging.
No, but like the equivalent to blue balls.
Edging, yeah. Blue balls, edging, yeah.
What's edging? No.
Edging is basically like when you get to the edge of...
Oh, it is? Okay, I've learned a new thing. Okay, yes, exactly. That one.
Education minute.
Sex education.
Is that a normal term? Am I too old?
Yeah.
Again?
Yeah, I think it's pretty common.
Yeah.
I never heard that. Funny.
Teaching Pixie new terms to use in her daily life.
Yeah. In my daily life, yes.
It's like
I'm
sometimes
just gonna
you
go
use
teach
words.
my kids what edging means.
Yeah. It's like sometimes you use like words like that, but you don't use them in a sexual way. So like I started using the term raw dogging to just like to just describe everyday things.
Just raw dogging life right now.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Okay, yeah. This whole discussion got a little bit spicy.
Hey, we warned people. They knew what they were getting into.
Yes, they did. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Do you guys have any other shows that are just like buried in your head? Like,
I don't know. I think I talked about all of mine that really stick out for me.
Yeah, I think we covered everything.
yeah.
I can't think of anything else.
Yeah, I'm just like, my whole head now, like, it's just but love in the air. Love in the air. I do not know why I'm so obsessed.
Oh, Pixie.
Okay. Yep.
Just
So
take a moment, collect yourself.
So that's it for this week's episode. We want to know how you feel about spicy scenes in BL. Is it not your thing? Do you have a favorite spicy scene from BL? Share your thoughts with us down in the comments or over on social media. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate, review, and follow us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Sharing this episode with your friends really helps us out. Thanks for joining us for this week's episode, and we'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.
We can hear you, Heather.
Now, Pixie, let me say that again. Do we need to tell you what edging is? Do we need to explain this?
Edging.